right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 53 of the HaskinCast Podcast, where I will cover Stranger Things Season 3, Episode 3. And I have to say, I'm really loving this season. So much better than I like Season 2. There's been little things I haven't liked within the episode, but so far the storyline has really moved. It's interesting, got a lot of new dynamics going on. And I like that they introduced, some new people. It's always kind of a little bit dangerous to do that when you have a cast that's kind of tight knit, but they've done well integrating the new people. Max, kind of feel like she's been there since the beginning. Billy, I hate, but he's an important character, and now the ice cream girl, Robin. So I think they've done well integrating the new people. Jumping into the episode, I have to say that that was a really cute opening. I'm not a big fan of like dick and fart jokes. They're kind of bottom of the barrel, reaching for stuff to me. But when you're dealing with kids this age, it's kind of normal that they're going to have some of that kind of humor. So I didn't really take anything weird for that. Just if it was an adult show, I would say that would be really just not my kind of humor. But for kids, that's the kind of stuff they're going to do. So again, very on par with their age. And I have to wonder how tough it is for the writers to write for kids this age. And I kind of wonder that in general, because I don't really know exactly what it was like to be that age or in that age group myself. I remember little bits about it, but most of the years just kind of blend together. I don't know how I was at any particular age. If I can associate it with a specific memory, and I happen to know how old I was at that time, I might be able to analyze that a little bit more. But in general, everything in my childhood is just kind of a blur. So I think that might be a challenge for the writers. But I do kind of feel like the kids are portrayed realistically, like this is how they would be. So well done to the writers on that, and to the whole production, the actors, the director, all of that, for keeping it real. So that was the opening. Really cute, kind of warm. And you could see that Elle still has her powers. She's not really using them a whole lot because she hasn't had to. Just, enough of a little tinge here and there, like looking at what the guys are up to and then doing the thing with the sodas in the last episode. So, she still has it. She's just not really needing to utilize her powers, which is probably good for her to rest up because, at some point she's going to have to battle some crazy demon and she'll be the only one that can do it. I think Hopper coming into the girls hanging out in the bedroom and assuming it was Mike, I think he's like way over the top in glee that he sort of broke them up or that he's not there. You would think he would have at least some concern for Elle's feelings, especially having lost his own daughter after everything that Elle has been through. So I have to say, I think Hopper's kind of a jerk at this point, at least when it comes to his adopted daughter's happiness. I would like to see a little more humanity out of him, but whatever he's going through is what he's going through, and that's why he is the way he is. Hopefully we'll have a little bit better of an understanding. I get that he was probably angry because he got stood up, but at the same point, it's like, when you look into your child's eyes, you would kind of think that all that would just melt away and that you would have some concern even through the alcohol-induced anger. But that being said, so he was a little happy about that. And then they go to this sort of spin the bottle twist where they have just written some people's names down on pieces of paper, and then Elle spins the bottle. And I guess the premise is that she's going to go look in on these people, which I guess if you have that ability, that's a cool way to play. And that's great. That's creative. But what doesn't make sense is, so the first one that she lands on is Mr. Wheeler, and they're like, oh, he's boring. Well, if you wouldn't want to go visit him, or if you have no intentions of following that through, why put his name down in the first place? Why would either one of them ever write Billy's name down, knowing that there's no way they would want to go and look in on what he's doing, even though they do? And then, I took a look at some of the other names. Dustin, Steve, Nancy, those make sense. But Mr. and Mrs. Wheeler and then Mr. Clark, the science teacher, were on there. And I'm like, why would you ever have put these people on there? You're not going to visit them. They don't interest you. So I kind of feel like that's weird. Obviously, they didn't put, Mike, Will, or Lucas because they just saw them. So there would be no reason to go back and see what they're up to. So I don't know, kind of a weird thing. I guess they just needed more names. But if you're not going to visit them, then what's the point? but still a neat sort of twist on spin the bottle when you have the kind of powers that Eleven does. Um, so then they go to the next morning, and Joyce comes to visit Hopper because she's learned about these magnets and some stuff from the science teacher. And of course, he's upset naturally that she stood him up. And again, with no phone call, she didn't call the restaurant and say, "Hey, I'm sorry, I can't make it," or anything at all. No indication to, to let him know that she cared. But at the same point, he just assumed that everything was okay. He wasn't concerned that anything might have happened to her. And considering the things that have gone on in their town, even though it's been a while, apparently, since there's been any kind of event, I feel like there would be a little bit more unity between these people, that they wouldn't just jump to being angry, that they would be more concerned about other things happening in the town. Although he tends to blow that off pretty quickly when she shows him the magnets and refuses to admit that anything's happening. So I guess I could kind of see it, but at the same point, it just seems like there would be something in the back of your head that would be a little bit of nagging concern instead of just anger that you got stood up. So I'm not really liking Hopper right now, regardless of what he's going through. I just think he's not being a realistic right now. But obviously, eventually, she convinces him at least enough to go back to the lab, where he has a strange encounter of being knocked out by someone. And of course, in a TV and movie, they always do this. And I don't necessarily think you would do this in real life, at least if you had your wits about you. But he disappears. He's like, "You stay here, because let's split up." That's always a really good idea. But you stay here. I'm going to go find out what that noise was. And then he gets attacked. And she's running around screaming his name, saying, "Hey, I'm here if you want to attack me. There's another person you need to be worried about." Of course, the person just runs away, but not smart. I mean, first of all, stay together. If you want to have her stay behind you, that's one thing. But, the separation thing, never a good idea. I don't really think people would do that in a real life situation so much as they do that in television and movies. So there's another thing I'm really kind of not buying. And not sure who this guy was, but I'm sure that will unfold as time goes on. There's really seemed to be nothing going on at the lab, so I don't really know why somebody would be there unless they were tracking Hopper, perhaps. That might be. Or just kind of watching over to see if anybody was snooping around. But again, if there's nothing there, then who cares if somebody's there snooping around or not? So I'm not quite sure where that's headed. But hopefully that storyline will play out at some point and we'll learn a little more about that. Obviously, I'm sure that Hopper and Joyce are in for much more danger in the remaining 5 episodes of the season. So then there's some more character build with Elle and Max, which I really like these two hanging out and being friends. I think they complement each other well. I think it's good for Elle to have an influence who's kind of like you know what, screw the world. We're just going to do what we want. We can. I think they're, a little unsupervised, but at the same point, Elle's got really nobody. So I'm glad that she has Max. It's good for her sanity so that she doesn't go off the rails like she did in season 2. And it's just kind of good for her to experience life a little bit and learn what it's like to just be a kid. And I think that's pretty good. So they go off on a little adventure trying to figure out what's going on with Billy. And of course, they go to the house. They discover some of this missing lifeguard stuff and trace it back to who it is. And then they go to her house. And, Elle's just ready to destroy. The look on her face when they go up to the door. And she is just ready to pillage. And then they're kind of deflated because there's Heather. And she appears to be fine. And I don't know how much they really picked up on. They're intelligent girls, so I'm hoping that they picked up on the sort of Stepford wife feeling that I got from Heather. I hope that they did too. I kind of feel like they left with saying that things aren't quite right, but they still left. They didn't go back and check on the house or anything, at least as far as we know, because that's where the episode ended. So I'm hoping that they still have an idea that something's not quite right there. The episode ends with Heather getting ready to apparently kill her father or torture him or do something to him. The mom's knocked out already. So I don't really know what the reason is for all of this. But one thing I think is very clear is that Billy has now taken Will's place. He's the one that's now possessed by the monster as he was taken away in an earlier episode. And I think that now he understands who Elle is because he has the memory of the monster and sees Elle trying to close that portal and all that she did at the end of season 2. So I'm betting 100% the fact that Billy's now possessed by the same, or whatever the current monster is, the same way that Will was in season 2. And that also explains why Will isn't really having any more connections, or hasn't for a while. Before in episode 1, when the rats were running by, like he kind of sensed something. But it seems like he's really kind of out of the loop right now. And I think it's because he's completely disconnected from whatever the source of all this is that's causing this, whether it's from the Upside Down or wherever it's really from, because I don't really think that's ever been explained or determined at this point. So it's going to be interesting to see where the next episode picks up, and then I'm already going to be halfway through the season, and that's kind of the trouble, is that there's so few episodes in a season of Stranger Things. I mean, really, there's 8 in this, and having to wait a year and a half for 8 episodes, yeah, they're good, but it just seems like there should be a bigger payoff for that. I mean, you look at the sitcoms and things, or even other dramas that can deliver, 20 some episodes, like 25, 26 episodes in a season. And it just feels like these kids are growing quick. So unless they're going to start shooting the next couple of seasons back to back, they're really going to have to play up the growth of these kids, because in real life, obviously, they're going to be moving at a fairly quick rate in their physical appearance and development, their intellectual development. So, it's the tough thing about doing a story that involves children is over the long run. If you do a movie, it's one thing, or do a series of a couple of movies, that's one thing. But you really have to address their age. And obviously things are moving very quickly with these kids. The separation of Will being the only one that's not interested in girls at this point, the only one that hasn't started dating somebody, really shows the distance in age, even though they're probably like a year or two apart. But in that age group, that's a huge deal. So he wants to still be a kid, play games in the basement. Will's like, hey, we're moving on from this stuff. I'm sorry you're not, but we're growing and you're going to catch up, but it's not today. So then, of course, Will goes home. He starts tearing up all the memories and all that. But I'm not seeing any connection between him and the source of all the evil. And at this point, not where I had expected it would go at the beginning of episode 1, unless he's just so, engrossed in all these things going on with his friends that he hasn't really paid attention to anything else yet. So we'll see. But I'm betting on Billy for this one. So that's the Ellie and Max thing. That's the Lucas, Mike, and Will, again, showing more of that separation just in the interest, and also as he starts to tear up the childhood memories. Now he's kind of isolating himself from the group as well. So there's a little bit more of that. I'm thinking now about the Nancy and Jonathan line, and I have to apologize because I think I called him Charlie earlier, as Charles, I think, is the actor's name. But I like this little relationship build between them, because their entire relationship is kind of started from and continued on some sort of investigation into the drama that's going on. I mean, going back to season 1, and there's always been a little bit of intensity between them in their connection. Obviously, they'd known each other for some time, going to the same school and growing up in the same town. But when she was dating Steve, there was a strain, but still there was always a connection between the two of them. And I like how that's building as they work together, and they're going around trying to solve this mystery with the rats and the missing, food and fuel and stuff like that. So, it's interesting because once again, here's Nancy going in front of these really, really ridiculously over the top men, trying to bring something to their attention. She crashed and burned the first time. Now she's got some documentation, some interesting facts. And once again, especially the real asshole blonde guy is just, berating her for it. Nobody's encouraging her. Nobody's seeing any journalistic, potential in her. Instead, it's just better to make fun of her, because that's what we do as guys, and just send her on her way. Go get the coffee, girl. Go get the sandwiches, because that's what you do. You're the secretary. If any one of those guys in a group of that, there's going to be at least one that's going to look at this and go, you know what, though, that might not be the answer, but it is interesting that you're finding all this stuff is going missing in a short period of time. Let's explore that. Instead, let's just berate her and make fun of her. And then when you think her boss, the apparent manager, steps in and tries to take it seriously, it turns around that he's just setting her up to, to kick her down the hill again. And for no reason whatsoever except to be part of the boys' club. Really annoying. It's a little bit over the top for me. It just seems like they don't need to go as far as they are. Back in the 80s, there were plenty of places like this. So they're probably playing this in the writing of the story very accurately. It's just tough for me to watch because, it's so stupid the way that we treat people for absolutely no reason whatsoever. But bless her heart for giving it another shot. I have to say, though, what I don't know is how much do the people in the town know what has happened? Do they really not know any of it? Was it all just a small group of people? It seems like there would have been some kind of hubbub about it because the kids going missing, even with school, and then that would have come home to the parents. It would have been on the news. But I'm really not sure because if I would think if the people of this town knew what had happened, they would start taking anything that's out of the ordinary a little bit more seriously. So I tend to lean to the fact that they're oblivious to what's happened. And that's certainly possible. But going along those lines, I just have to assume that. Otherwise, their behavior is even more over the top, in my opinion. But, Nancy is a curious bird, and she's very... she's got some great detective skills. I think she would be a great reporter. And I like that she's not giving up. So then they go back to the lady's house where the rat was, because, of course, they don't know that the rat exploded. And whatever was left of the rat started crawling out of the cage or oozed itself out of the cage and I guess into her. And now she's taken over eating the food, the cat food or whatever it was. And now obviously she's possessed by whatever the thing is. So they kind of left it at a bit of a cliffhanger. I'm sure that Nancy and Jonathan got out of there just fine. I don't suspect that there was anything that happened to them. I think they probably just saw what was going on with her. And then after the scene ended, they would have just turned and run and gotten out of there. Their smart move, though, at this point would be to go to Hopper. Hopefully they do that and he kind of gets out of whatever funk he's in and starts taking some of this stuff seriously, especially after being attacked at the lab. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting series this year. And this was a great episode. In part, it's still setting up things for the finale as the show tends to do. But it also was pretty action-packed. It had a lot of things going on. The only thing that I thought was, I should say the only other thing that I thought was a little kind of unnecessary was, and this is very common, especially in television, is, they see a guy, they think he's Russian, he's part of the thing because he has a somewhat stoic or almost angry look on his face. And then it turns out he's this random fitness instructor that's just going to start a class in the middle of the mall. There's, I don't know. There was really no reason for him to look angry except to make the story more interesting, to give them a decoy to start tracking and thinking that they were onto something, and they were getting a little payoff for all that work that they had put into translating the Russian transmission. But overall, it was a great episode. I'm really looking forward to the next one and seeing where things are going. I really feel, of course, like the end of the first two seasons, there's going to be some sort of epic battle, but this time it's going to be between Elle and Billy. I'm not sure how the new rat lady will be involved in all that. Obviously, Nancy's going to be trying to save somebody during some part of this. But I think that's going to happen. And then I'm just going to make a prediction for the end of the series. If they actually get to make a finale, if it doesn't get canceled or anything before then, and Netflix is well known for that, but I think that Stranger Things will go the distance. But if they actually get to do a finale, I will say it's going to end with everyone in Mike's basement playing Dungeons and Dragons. I think that'll be the full circle of the show. So I'm going to make that prediction right now on July 4th, 2019. And we'll see how many years the show goes and whether that actually happens or not. But it already seems the logical conclusion. And being that TV is somewhat predictable, I just have a feeling it's going to end that way. So we shall see. But thank you for listening, for tuning in. I hope that this has been enjoyable, that the insights have been at least interesting. And we'll see what happens in the next. I don't know if all of these, any of these fireworks will make it into the final mix here, but the fireworks are going off sporadically as I read this. So I hope you guys are having a great day, enjoying the 4th, and we'll be back with you for episode 4. Bye.